Okay, this is joint work with several authors, Iryna, Kyzyma, Noel, Alperin, Lucia, Zanotto, and Marc. It is work that is still ongoing. Several results are still preliminary, so I'm telling that also we changed the title yesterday, basically. So this is just to show that things are going. But what we are trying to do is to investigate on trends of health inequality, and we call health inequality, but this is actually differential mortality differential in terms of socioeconomic status, and this is have been the inequalities have been to increase, especially in US. There is this several work by Kyzyma and Deaton about that, and so the question is, what can we say about Europe? But there are some literature about that, of course, and one paper we mention is that of Marc and co-authors on the proceeding of National Academy of Science, and their findings that basically in Europe the health inequalities, the differential mortality is not increasing in Europe, not like in US, and that the health of less educated people is actually improving, so the mortality is declining. So usually these findings are based on Europe, are based on registered data, and this is what Marc is doing. Actually, they use both registered data and survey data, but they use survey data only to measure self-reported health inequality, while mortality, differential mortality, is studied through registered data. And our point is to see if survey data and longitudinal survey data that we have, and namely Suhrcke and share, can provide the same findings or something different. And you might know that Suhrcke provides a coverage almost universal of EU member states, and UK is also included up to now. And share is a smaller survey that includes only 18 countries, but we could use only a few of them. So what are the pros and the cons of using survey longitudinal data rather than registered data? The pros is that you have harmonized data for several countries. When I say harmonized, I say that this definition of the variables is they try to be harmonized. Of course, the survey are then run by the different statistical agencies in the different states, so there are differences, of course, in terms of sampling, and there are other differences, but they making an effort to make an harmonized data. And moreover, if we want to focus on trends, then we can estimate these trends based on regular waves of the panel survey. Suhrcke is on annual basis, so we have annual waves for each country. Share has biannual waves for each country. And moreover, we can combine several socioeconomic indicators. Education is usually considered, but we can also consider income. We can, in the Suhrcke, we have information for calculating the deprivation index, so we can use also deprivation indicators. So we have several indicators of socioeconomic status to use. And but there are some pitfalls of survey data. The main one is the small sample size, especially if we focus on mortality, on deaths. In some countries we can have a few number of deaths, and then the estimates of the health inequality are highly dependent on the specification of the statistical model we use, because we have to use a statistical model in that case. And we know that survey data are usually biased in terms of mortality. We know that there is an underestimation of mortality because there is a selected sample. We don't know actually, or this is not really a knowledge, what is the effect of this bias in terms of inequality, because it can be biased in terms of level of mortality, but maybe not in terms of inequality, that we don't know actually. And then there are some specific survey pitfalls. For example, the Suhrcke survey follows individual only for at most 4 ways, so only for 4 years at most. While share follows only people aged over 50, so we don't have information of people younger than 50, and with the annual waves, not with the yearly waves. So this, of course, is a problem. So what we are trying to do, we have to use a statistical model to estimate mortality rates by sex, by country, and by education level. We also tried with income, but we are not presenting now the results with income. And we have to use a model, and that is difficult. If you think UCIT has 25 countries, and we have to use the same model for each country if we want to make a fair comparison then across the countries, and it is difficult to find a good model that it has a good fit for all the countries. We don't. Thank you. And so we don't have another point is that we don't have deaths under the age of 16. Also because the information of socioeconomic status is not available, and in the Suhrcke the deaths over 80 are grouped into a single age category, so we can make a distinction between ages over 80. So the model basically is a Poisson model, and we include the main covariates, so the age, the sex, the year to estimate the trend, and the educational level, of course, to estimate the inequality, and the log of the exposed population is included as an offset to estimate basically rates rather than counts. So we have to include some broad age class, and the education level, we use these 3 categories basically, and the calendar year is estimated through a quadratic spline. So we made this spline interact with the education level, so we allow the model to predict a trend for the health inequality in this way. So we are doing okay. We don't make sex interact with the year, so we are not estimating difference if. Not with year and with the education level, so we are not providing evidence about the sex difference in terms of inequality, since we don't make interact with the education level, and we don't provide also we do not provide a trend specific for sex. That could be interesting actually, but then it is not possible to have this interaction with in the model. And well, we have done more or less the similar things. There are some variations. The main variation is that we run actually, the main difference with the Suhrcke model is that we run the model separately for each wave. So the age, the wave is not included as a covariate, but we have a separate model for each wave. That makes the estimates a bit more noisy, I would say. Okay, I'm showing some results that we have so far, and this is the estimated trend. This is basically the risk ratio. So is the RII is the ratio of ratio index of inequality. So this is the trend that we have for Northern Europe countries. These are the results from the Suhrcke, and we see that the northern countries are mainly having a rather equal, I mean, not an increasing inequality for Finland and Sweden. We have an increasing inequality for UK, and this is the trend we have for Ireland. But I have to say that the Ireland here, we have small sample, small number of deaths here, so I'm not quite sure about this trend. Of course, this problem, this issue of small number of deaths we have also for other countries. This is why I don't believe actually that in the Netherlands 2007 we had a risk ratio of 30. It's quite not easy to believe that, but if we look at the trend, we have actually, it is true that the trend is declining for Netherlands, for France, while it's for Austria is remaining more or less stable with a small increase and then a small decline. And then also Luxembourg is providing some strange trend in these 3 years and then a declining one. So maybe also Luxembourg, I'm not sure about this, but except for Luxembourg and Belgium, Belgium is a notable exception. Yeah, I'm going to the conclusion. But the trend is mainly declining. Well, Southern Europe, we have this trend, and this is interesting because we also see that there is this current for Greece and Spain that is maybe related somehow with an economic recession that there have been. The Italy trend is was a declining one, but then it got. So I'm going to the conclusion. I'm not showing the share results that are still provisional. So the point is that we have to be careful in the interpretation because, yeah, in some cases the results might be sensitive of on the model specification, but in a way we can find some interesting results. For example, can we relate trends in Southern Europe to economic recession? That would be interesting. Marc didn't find that connection with the economic recession. The Eastern European countries have shown an average increasing trend, especially for this country, while the Western Europe show a more stable trend as found in Marc and others. And the other conclusion we find that is for northern country, but this is a specific problem of our data, probably registered data. You know, northern countries have high quality registered data, so we can think that the results that it is found from registered data are much more reliable than those we provide with the Suhrcke or the share estimates. However, we should consider the increasing trend that we have found instead for UK and Ireland that may pose some question about the real trend of health inequality in European trend. Thank you for your attention.